Welcome to the Vintage Athlete Podcast, specially designed for retired athletes. I'm your host, Tara Fortier. I'm a master's level licensed and board certified behavior analyst, yoga and meditation teacher, nutrition coach, and now mom of 2 athletes. But most importantly, I'm just like you, a retired athlete doing life after sports. Whether it's trying new things that you might be bad at, learning how to feed and exercise your post-sport body without kicking your own butt, or figuring out how to fill that giant hole in your life that used to be filled with practices, coaches, teammates, and the adrenaline rush of your sport, I'm going to drop some unconventional knowledge and strategies on you and do it from a place of love and acceptance. We'll tackle solutions from a unique perspective rooted in mindfulness and acceptance and commitment therapy. If you're a retired athlete looking to create a fulfilling and empowered life beyond your sport, this show is for you. This is the Vintage Athlete Podcast, your game plan for life after sports. So lace up for your next adventure and we'll transition, redefine, and evolve together. Hello there. I'm Tara, and welcome to the very first episode of the Vintage Athlete Podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Starting this podcast has been a passion project of mine for a long time. And so I'm super excited to finally get it going. And so I think it's probably good for me to tell you a little bit about myself and my why and why starting this podcast has been so important to me. So let's start there. So again, my name is Tara Fortier, and I am a board certified and licensed behavior analyst. I'm a yoga and meditation teacher. I'm a nutrition coach, and I also am a mom. And I'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later. But I just wanted to start off by telling you my background. I am a former athlete. I was a competitive gymnast for most of my childhood. I started taking classes probably around the age of 3, and I started competing when I was, I think, maybe 7 or 8. And I competed all the way through high school. And so gymnastics was always this huge part of my life. So I did gymnastics all the way through high school, like I said, and then I went to college and I didn't really want to continue doing gymnastics, or I just felt like I had a lot of injuries and my body was kind of beat up at a pretty young age. And so I decided to really focus on being in college rather than being a gymnast. I had kind of pursued, some options before I picked a school to go to, but in the end, I decided I was not going to compete in college. And so I ended up going to a school where they had a co-ed cheerleading team and actually tried out for that instead. And I became a cheerleader at my university. And so I enjoyed that a lot because it was a lot of the same skills that I used with my body, but it was just a lot less wear and tear. It was a lot less intense on my body, and our practice schedule was a little more manageable. And so I did that. I did that through college, and then and I finished college. That was really the true end of my sports career. And so I started working right out of college in the field of applied behavior analysis. I worked with children who had behavior disorders. I started on an inpatient unit working with children who were admitted to the hospital for significant behavior problems. And that's where I learned applied behavior analysis. And it was this magical tool that I had never known about, where I was really able to see behavior change happen right in front of me based on the things that I was doing, that I was taught to do. And so I worked in this environment for about 3 years and decided that I was going to go get my master's degree in applied behavior analysis. So I went to graduate school in Florida, and it was during graduate school that I discovered yoga. And so I've been practicing yoga ever since. And then over the last, I would say, 3 years or so, I decided to become a yoga teacher. And so I got my yoga teacher certification and also my meditation teaching certification. A little bit more about behavior analysis in that world. There's a lot of different behaviors and people and populations that you can work with. ABA is mostly known as a treatment for autism spectrum disorder. It's one of the most evidence-based effective strategies for treating the symptoms of ASD. And so that's what I've done a lot of my career. But ABA applies to anybody that's behaving, which is all of us all the time. So one of the things that I really have become interested in over the last number of years is taking what I know and applying it to other worlds, other populations, other behavioral needs that people have. And so in learning more and more about that and exploring that idea, I have started learning a lot more about acceptance and commitment therapy, which is also known as ACT. And so I've become very well versed in ACT, which takes a lot of the same ideas in ABA, but it's more applicable to adults, to people that have fully functioning verbal skills and can really process information presented in that way. And so it's all about being in the present moment. And it's also all about learning how to sit with things that are uncomfortable and things that maybe we often try to avoid and taking meaningful actions in spite of that. So I will get much more into detail on this in later episodes, but I started to learn a lot more and start to use ACT. And what I realized is that it aligns really beautifully with yoga and with meditation and with mindfulness. There's a lot of mindfulness practices that are incorporated into ACT. And so I started to think about how I could fuse all of these really important and meaningful strategies and things that I know into something that can help a population and a group of people that I truly deeply understand and care about, which is former and retired athletes. I definitely know the struggles and the unique needs that happen to someone as they transition out of competitive sports and they have that change in lifestyle. And it can be a true struggle. It's not easy. And I started to think about why we don't have more structured, evidence-based, effective support for people who retire from their sport. People who are athletes spend a ton of time and a ton of effort and energy in their sport, becoming the best that they can possibly be. And when they're done with that, that can be really, really a challenge. And they need support. They need a way to make that transition easier and set them up for a very meaningful and fulfilling life after that. It's hard to make that transition from something that you spent so much of your life doing to a life where that's not really present anymore. And so that's why I'm doing this. That's why I think this is so important. One of the other factors in all of that is that I'm a mom of two athletes. Like I said, I was a gymnast. I struggled with a lot of the things that retired athletes struggle with. And my daughter is a competitive gymnast just like me. My son plays football and track and is heavily involved in his sports. And I just wonder what things are going to be like when the inevitable happens, whether that's tomorrow or whether that's 10 years from now. How are they going to be able to handle that transition when they spend so much time and they have so much passion for what they do? And so I just started to wonder why there's no standard of support for athletes when they retire, either voluntarily or involuntarily. And I come from a clinical world where it's important to establish and use best practices. And so as a clinician, it's important for me to recommend and use strategies that are researched and have evidence of their effectiveness. And so it has become my mission to develop and use effective strategies that are rooted in applied behavior analysis and acceptance and commitment therapy to former and retired athletes whose needs are often overlooked. What I've also found in being a yoga and meditation teacher and a practitioner of these things for a very long time is that yoga and meditation have so many benefits, not just physically, but just emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And like I mentioned a little bit before, they align so beautifully, these practices, with acceptance and commitment therapy and with some of those behavior change strategies. So here we are. I've taken all of this, I've put it together into some really meaningful and effective strategies that I really am excited to put out into the world. And so I want this podcast to be a safe place for former and retired athletes to be able to hear some of the things that resonate with them and be able to get their needs met. Let me just tell you a little bit more about what you can expect from this podcast. So we'll spend a lot of time talking about those really unique physical and mental health needs that retired athletes have, and those strategies that we can use to navigate those challenges. I also want to incorporate some actual practices and bring some of that into this podcast, like guided meditations and exercises from ACT that I use with my clients. You can also look forward to sometimes there being real life stories of other retired athletes and what they went through and where they are now and what helped get them there. So expect a new episode every other week. If I am able to put out more, because I often have a lot to say, I will do that. But to start with, I'm going to plan to put out a new episode every other week. And so as I wrap up this very first episode, I want to leave you with this. The most important thing that I learned about living a fulfilling life after sports is that you need to see yourself and your time as an athlete as a chapter in the book of your life, only telling part of the story, right? And not defining fully who you are, because there's many more chapters to go and there's a lot of development to happen. So see that time in your life as just one chapter. And that really can make a lot of difference in how you move forward in your life after sports. So thank you so very much for listening to the first episode of the Vintage Athlete Podcast. I am grateful to be able to go on this adventure with you, and I'm looking forward to supporting you. Let's let our days as athletes support us rather than hold us back, right? Let's let those skills and those important characteristics that we had as athletes lift us up rather than keep us down. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about what I do and the kind of things I offer, please feel free to visit my website. My website is vintageathlete.org, org. And there's a lot of free resources there that I'd love for you to check out. You can also follow me on Instagram at vintage.athlete. So I look forward to connecting with you more and more over the time that this podcast evolves. And again, thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I hope that I can be of value to you as we move forward. So until next time, keep evolving. Thanks. You have officially crossed the finish line of this episode of the Vintage Athlete Podcast. Congrats. I hope you're feeling empowered to live your best life after sports. And remember, you are not alone in this journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback not only helps improve this podcast, but also helps other retired athletes find our community. Stay connected with me on Instagram at vintage.athlete for daily tips, inspiring stories, and to share your own experiences. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for being a part of the Vintage Athlete team. Together, let's continue to find balance, build fitness, and redefine success in this exciting new chapter. I'm Tara Fortier, and I can't wait to connect with you again next time. Until then, keep evolving and keep creating your legacy beyond the game. Take care and see you next time on the Vintage Athlete Podcast.